All right. Welcome to the podcast. This is the World of Art and Magic podcast where we talk about the symbolism and occult knowledge hidden in films, game, and other media. My name is Wes. I'm an illustrator and comic artist. You can find my work in the link descriptions below. Today, I have my friend Paul with me. Paul, can you give us a brief introduction?
Yeah, hi. So I am Paul, and you can find me at reinstallpaul.com. Same name on YouTube. I am, I guess, primarily you'd say a writer. I do have one book that I have been sitting on. It's on my website though, How to Understand the Occult, and I like to dive into subjects that really inspire art and really inspire literature and those kind of things, inspire good storytelling
Mm-hmm.
and you just never know where you're going to go
Mm-hmm.
when you investigate those kind of things. I've experienced a lot of changes in my life and a lot of new discoveries that in some of these stories that I've been looking into. So that's basically what I do.
Yeah, I find that understanding story is it's a transformative experience on so many different levels. On my YouTube channel, I've been doing these video essays on Blade Runner and Minority Report because I've been adapting some of Philip K. Dick's stories into comics, and it's been really interesting because I'm looking at the films, but then I'm also taking what it is that I see in the films and I'm comparing it to this book called The Anatomy of Story by John Truby, and it's basically like a breakdown of like how stories are actually structured, right? And so you could say it's like the alchemical process of like putting an actual story together. So I
Hmm.
have that, and then I also have Philip K. Dick's journals, which I think the book is called the Exegesis of Philip K. Dick, and you can find that online. But that book is basically uh, him writing about these mystical experiences that he had, and he's trying to figure out what it is that happened to him. And we were talking a little bit about Philip K. Dick before we started this. You said that you had seen a video on him where he was talking about ontological time and how it worked.
Yeah, orthogonal time is what he's
Orthogonal.
calling it, and that just basically means straight time, or it basically refers to a right angle or linear time. And this was I'll send you the link and we can post this, but there's a specific edit that someone made that is pretty valuable because I guess there's a lot of erroneous stuff in the video, in the original video, but someone cleaned it up. So Philip K. Dick is talking about his understanding of, he's deeply intuitive, and he has this sense of time that is not linear, and he begins to talk about the um, I guess the infinite levels of branching of time, where time can branch off into these side roads, and like nothing is fixed, and that you have all of these like uh, parallel streams of time that are just infinitely branching off and just going and going and going. And he uses this analogy of a painting where imagine a rich man in a manor, and he has a painting, and he tells us um, his help that I want you to change the painting over the mantle every single day. I want to see a different painting. And
Mm-hmm.
so they change the painting day after day, but then start to run out of paintings, and so they start to change the same painting. And so the there's this idea of the man who comes to the house, and he's looking at this painting, and he has this sense that the painting, he's seen this painting before, but it is different, like a tree is taken out, or maybe a horse is painted in, maybe something's totally changed. But there's this sense of like of time not exactly being linear, or not in the way that we're accustomed to cognizing what time is actually about. And that he goes into this, he explains, or he talks about deja vu, and he says, a deja vu is like experiencing one of these side roads. You take this side road, this side road of time, or you're having a glimpse into this area, and then you come back into your current timeline. And
Mhm.
so what it seems like Philip K. Dick was experiencing was his sense of time, or not even, I wouldn't even say his sense of time, but his sense of self was decoupling, and was experiencing not only these side roads, but I think what Philip K. because um, I've experienced a similar thing
Yeah.
from meditation, where I have a sense that my identity is just completely decoupled sometimes, where I'm like, my identity is just completely irrelevant. I read a nasty comment from someone on my YouTube channel directed at me personally, and I just laughed out loud because I thought it was hilarious. And I got to tell you, like, the before me, the before serious meditating me would have just been really upset by this and that kind of stuff. But I've have this sense of being completely decoupled from my sense of identity, or my, my false self is just kind of, and I've had glimpses of it. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say like, I'm enlightened or anything, or any nonsense like that. But I'm saying I've had these glimpses, so I can kind of identify a little bit with Philip K. Dick and what he's saying. And I think what he's experiencing is an expanded awareness, because once you're not so uh, once you're not so tethered so tightly, or hanging on so tightly to your sense of identity, and you can come into like this expanded awareness, then you start to see reality. I think you start to sense reality more as it actually is, versus just being stuck in your own ego and your own little world, if that makes sense. So I think Philip K. Dick, when listening to him speak on this subject, it seems to me that he is having a an experience where uh he's his sense of self is falling away, if that makes sense. um and at least that's my impression. That's the impression I get when I listen to Philip K. Dick talk about some of these things, and some of these recordings. So I'll link that video. It's very interesting. And
Is the
yeah,
is the
so
video is the video called "If You Think This World Is Bad, You Should See Some of the Others"? Is that what the speech is called? Is this the famous one that he did?
I'll have to, the exact name escapes me.
Okay.
It's I can tell you that it was in 1977, and it was in Metz,
Yeah.
France. And I guess there's probably about 5 or 6 different versions now.
Hmm.
Um, but I'll send you the one that I saw, because apparently there is a translator. So there's some translation in French, and it kind of messes up the flow a little bit of like his ideas and fleshing them out. So I'll send you the link that actually has, but I think that may be the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the only speeches that he ever did. You talking about there being a painting and then they just subtly change the painting every day. It reminds me of did you read his book, any of his books? Have you read Ubik, for example?
I haven't read any of his books.
Okay. Ubik, it touches specifically on that. Like there's a character, I can't remember the complete details, but there's a character that's a precog, right? She has the ability of precognition, but she can change the past. So he writes it very subtly to where it is that there's characters interacting in a room, and there's, like, for example, a blue painting on the wall. But then 2 paragraphs later, the painting is now red, right? And so he subtly works that idea of somebody being able to use their mind or their imagination in order to retroactively change something. And the sense that I get from reading through some of his journals in and some of the stuff that I've listened to with like Neville Goddard, there's another guy named do you know who Bashar is? Have you ever heard of Bashar?
I've heard the name.
Okay. So um so these different ideas that I've collected that I find are interesting is the idea that there really is there's no past and there's no future, and there's a multitude of universes that we're basically stepping into depending on what it is that we're putting our attention on in a feeling kind of way. Like we can't help but feel something at any given moment. And that is kind of directing us to whichever universe that is popping into existence like every moment, right? Um, that's kind of the sense that I get with what Philip K. Dick is getting at with this character archetype of the precog, the person who has the ability with their imagination to basically just they're putting themselves in these different universes and almost like fucking with people a little bit with the other people there. Like they're almost kind of like a trickster kind of a character.
I think that it's completely within. I mean, it makes perfect sense because in my understanding, physical reality itself has never been scientifically proven.
Yeah.
We have form,
Mm-hmm.
right? Form exists, but the actual physical thing, like, it's at the Large Hadron Collider, right,
Mm-hmm.
in Switzerland. They're breaking, the presumption when they built that thing was we're going to break down every we're going to break down the smallest particles and see what the smallest singular thing is. What's the smallest thing of physical reality that constitutes all of this? And they haven't found it. There's the Higgs boson they call the God particle, but that's a field. And so we're talking about fields, and our cognition as human beings kind of uh, I wouldn't I guess in a way, I mean it it's useful, but to exist in this form, but it's really just this sort of illusion. So if you think about, if reality really is pure conscious awareness, which is what it seems to be, if everything is really no thing, if it's just no thing, then
Mm-hmm.
the time manipulation or the changing of past events um, is entirely on the table, isn't it? And I would even
Mm-hmm.
argue that it's not even necessarily a past event. I guess. I mean, that gets into some really slidey territory
Mm-hmm.
when we're trying to talk about when I'm trying to imagine what it's like to be outside of time. Then things start to break down
Mm-hmm.
immediately, and I can't really describe it. I mean, the only thing I've intuited in my life is that there's some sort of universal eternal now that is always there. And
Mm-hmm.
so and then if I take that with how I understand the larger cycles of time, um, I lean a lot on Vedic philosophy because it's kind of, to me, it's kind of the structure of when it's the thing that makes the most sense in all of this, is that there's these great cycles of time, and it's not, linear time is completely illusory, and we're not talking about a beginning, middle, and an end. We're talking about an endless eternal cycle. And so in an endless eternal cycle, things go round and round, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so anything is possible when you're in a cyclical time cycle, combined with the fact that physical reality, or what we think is like some sort of physical object, doesn't even exist at all, and science has never been able to prove it. So there we have it.
Yeah, there was something that I read. We were just talking about starting our own individual podcast where me and you meet up regularly. And there's a guy that I follow that we're going to definitely have to interview. His name is Frank Yang. But I just saw a post that he made on Instagram the other day. And it was talking about how they've now proven, I would have to find it and send it to you. I don't know the details of it, but they have scientifically proven that local reality just does not exist. Like if there's not something there to observe it, then it doesn't exist. It's like that. It goes back to the whole quantum idea of like, is it a wave? Is it a particle? It's really interesting because like, how does that? how are we supposed to incorporate that into our worldview? It just seems so opposed to the way it is that we live our daily lives, you
Well,
know?
I don't know if you felt this, but you know, we're in a cusp period. We're between paradigms right now, and
Yeah.
that's why things are so topsy turvy and everyone's all confused, and and there's all this craziness going on now.
Yeah.
It's something that humanity's been through many times, and it's a cycle,
Yeah.
and it's something that we're going through. But I mean, it really is. I mean, to have clarity really means to come into your own essence, because if we as human beings, or whatever, whatever we want to call ourselves, if we are part of this reality, which we most certainly are. I mean,
Yeah.
we have some uh we have this capacity for conscious awareness, and so if we're a part of that, and if the observer and the observed are essentially part of the same system and arguably the same thing, then we have control over that, then we have say over that. And the reason why people are seem so nutty right now, or things are just so uncertain, and all this kind of stuff, it all comes down to conscious awareness. I mean, look at the political leaders in the
Hmm.
Western countries. That perfectly reflects the level of conscious awareness of the constituency.
Yeah.
That's
Totally.
exactly what it is. So we're in a phase now where this paradigm is coming to an end, and people are realizing that. And I'll tell you something, there will be a time, and we're going to see this at some point. I'm not in the business of predicting the future, or saying
Hmm.
anything other than what comes to me just naturally. But I'll say that there's going to be some sort of uh, recognizing of everyone. The 100th monkey effect, right? You've heard of that, where
Hmm.
there's enough. So I think there's this book about these monkeys that learn how to, like, open a coconut, I think it
Hmm.
was. And I could be a little bit off on that, but there's this island and like a 10th monkey, or starts to, and then the numbers grow of how many monkeys can figure out how to open up coconut. And by the 100th monkey, then pretty much all of them instinctively,
Hmm.
intuitively know how to do it for some reason. And so the same thing is going to happen with humanity. Once there's a certain number of people that really recognize that conscious awareness is at work in all of this, then you're going to see a massive change in people's attitudes. It's going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be some Hollywood version. Okay, it's not going to be so any kind of image, any kind of idol or image you have in your mind of how it's going to look, or what it's going to be like, or some Hollywood bullshit, just completely let that go, because that's not reality. Reality unfolds in ways that are completely a surprise, right? They're organic. That's how reality works. If we didn't have if, like, Terence McKenna talks about the propensity of nature and the universe to move towards novelty. And if we didn't have novelty, we wouldn't have this universe in its current form to begin with, and none of it. So we have this interesting, where it's paradoxes all the way down, but we have this interesting play between novelty and the cyclical nature of time kind of moving together, where it's that old adage that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes,
Hmm.
right? Which is also an indication of the cyclical nature of time, and how things sort of resemble things of the past, but then there's going to be something new. So we're entering, and I hate to sound like some kind of um, new age weirdo or something, but we literally are entering a new age. We're entering a
Hmm.
new season, a
Hmm.
new cosmic season, as it were. And those actually mean something. And throughout history, when we look back at history in the changes of from each age to another age, there have been massive shifts in humanity. Always, like there, and
Mhm.
it's something that you can look back and see that people thought was significant for some reason. Did they just think it because they were just superstitious and they didn't know? They had an intuitive sense in themselves that something was changing every single time. It's not like people just make this stuff up because it makes a good story,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It does it you know it does make for good stories, but that's the sense that we have is, all of the great stories came from real feelings, right? From something that we really sensed in our conscious awareness, in our intuition. These things um, these things are very real. And so I think something's going to be happening very soon where there's going to be a great revealing or a great reckoning where people are going to go, wow, we just kind of um, we spent a lot of time concentrating on stuff that wasn't important, and look at what we have to show for it. And I think the impetus for that is going to be financial, because there's a
Yeah.
wonderful book called the Kabbalah of Money, and it explains the energy systems of how money is really just an energy system. And if you understand money and currency through through like a intuitive, really deep intuitive energetic sense, then you start to understand that everything that you're seeing today is because of the corruption of the money system, and because human beings are inherently corrupt, right?
Yeah.
We're
Mhm.
inherently and I know and I apologize, I'm going a little bit off
Go for
track.
it. Go for it. Go for
I just want to finish with this thought here.
it.
But human beings are inherently corrupted, and throughout human history, um, we've had to deal with, okay, how do we have a money system when we know that human beings are inherently corrupted, and that's never going to change? Well, what
Mhm.
we do is have money that's incorruptible. Okay, money that's incorruptible. What does that mean? You're using something that cannot be corrupted, that cannot be created. Gold, silver, right? The alchemists of antiquity, what did they focus on? At least, in the external physical realm, the alchemists tried to figure out how to make gold. Because if you can make gold, well, then the king or whoever you were working for, or maybe you're doing that for yourself, you'd be incredibly rich and you'd be free, right? Because money is the energy of freedom. It's not wealth. Wealth is having an abundance of time, because in this life you have a limited amount of time.
Mhm.
Okay, you have a very limited amount of time in this human form. Wealth affords you to do with what you want with your time. That's what wealth is. People get confused and they think someone who's wealthy has lots of money. No, you're not really wealthy if you don't have a lot of time. If you have a lot of money but you don't have a lot of time, that's not wealth. That's that's something else. So it's interesting to understand that if human beings are corruptible and have always been corrupt, not to say that there aren't good people. There are plenty of good people that are not corrupted. However, we are in a time where, since the money is corrupted, since we're using basically, we're using monopoly money, okay? What that does is it forces honest people to be dishonest. Think about that.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
forces honest people to cut corners and do dishonest things just to feed their family, just to keep the company going, just to keep their employees paid, just to keep everything going. And so we're going to reach. So what I'm talking about is that's going to be the driving force for this massive, like, overnight, people are going to go, what the hell is going on here? Why are we doing this? And then they're
Mhm.
going to flip the tables, and they're not
Mhm.
going to want to have any part of it. And people are realizing it's going to be all of the people that have been duped, and then that small group that have been hiring professional actors that run for president
Mm-hmm.
on both sides
Mm-hmm.
to fool them. Because listen, I'll just say this, if I'm a smart person and I don't want to work hard, what do? I make millions of other people do it for me and give me money while
Mm-hmm.
I basically just feed off of feed off of their labor. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's happening. And people are going to, they're coming around to that idea slowly but surely, and coming to the point where, okay, we've been doing all of this for somebody else. Anyway, I kind of got off track there, but if you look at the, I don't like to give people homework, because people give me homework all the time. Hey, you should read this book. Hey, you should check this out. And I'm like, I have like 500 books
Yeah.
I haven't even read. You know what I mean? But if anything I said in relation to money and the corruption of the money, if any of that's interesting, just read the Kabbalah of Money, and check out. There's on YouTube. There's something called the Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney. It's very esoteric. Mike Maloney, the Hidden Secrets of Money. If you want to know about like how they run this ridiculous scam,
Mm-hmm.
it's a magic trick. It's basically a magic trick. It's a pretty interesting magic trick. I don't even know how I got on that subject, Wes. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. This is totally relevant to everything. I mean, I think that it's all pretty much fair game because, like you said, we're living through this huge paradigm shift, and to bring it to both the David Lynch, who you're covering through Twin Peaks right now, which I'm working my way through your analysis, and I've watched most of Twin Peaks. But I'm going to go back and rewatch it because I'm not as well understood as you are with David Lynch's stuff. But in Philip K. Dick was intuiting all the things it is that we were going through. Like, even though the movies themselves are not the best representation of his ideas, really, that are in his books, because in the books, his ideas are much stranger, and all of his characters. That he has this trope that I love, and it's the reason why I wanted to make comics out of his stuff. Is that his character trope or his character archetype is just an average person who has some sort of bizarre experience and they can't figure out if they're falling through some crack in reality and they're seeing some higher aspect of reality or they're losing their mind. And what is the difference between the two? That was an experience that he had himself, and he really conveyed that in his stories. But if you just look at it in terms of like what he intuited just with Blade Runner, what is the introduction that you get from Deckard in the very first opening scene? He's sitting down and he's doing what? He's reading a newspaper in an overcrowded street, trying to find a job. He's somebody he left the profession of being a Blade Runner because he knows that it has corrupted his soul. So this goes back to what you were saying about good people doing bad things, right?
Right.
And he doesn't want to go back to that profession because the police have to come there and pretend like they're arresting him to get him to go to Brian. And while he's reading that newspaper, we see the advertisement blimp go over the top of his head, and he looks up, and it's kind of this grass is greener on the other side sort of thing it is that we see in every aspect of our society now, where it's like, hey, come to the off-world colony, start a new life. But if this if this
Yeah.
new if this new life is so great, why are the replicants revolting and trying to come back to Earth, right? So there's like this subtext of like the plight of the modern man. Our protagonist, right from the very get-go, he's out of work. He's having to basically fend for like whatever scraps that are left in this world that is run by the only thing that's sacred in Blade Runner is the Tyrell Corporation, which is a giant pyramid. That's the only sacred space that we see, you know. Um, and I mean, he completely intuited that, and I don't know if I've mentioned on this podcast in the previous episode I did, but I've moved to Thailand, and I've noticed the biggest thing that I've noticed is how much of a difference it makes to have like sacred spaces around you. Because Thailand has like 40,000 Buddhist temples. And I used to live in Texas, and Thailand, I think, is actually smaller than Texas. So there's 40,000 temples in a place that is smaller than Texas, which is just crazy. But it makes such a huge difference because, like, there's places that I go to uh, that I can go to regularly that are like it's like walking into I don't know, Elden Ring or something. You're walking through these ruins that are like 500 to 2,000 years old. Like me
Oh
and my
man.
girlfriend, we just went to for my birthday. She took me to the national park, and they have a statue where it was like I'll have to find it and send it to you, but it's they have a carving where it's one of the kings is basically dictating the Thai alphabet, and then they have um, this square, almost it looks kind of like like a stone that like the Ten Commandments was put into, but it's like a stone, and on each side of it is like the alphabet, the Thai alphabet, and they just have it standing there. And then all in that national park is like one of the old cities that was fought over by the different regions that are now Cambodia and Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand. And so you're seeing these old Buddha statues that are, I don't know, 1,000 years old or something like that, and some of them have been destroyed from the war, I guess, or just from age. And it completely changes the way it is that you feel, as opposed to like when I was in the States. I was traveling. I was doing pharmaceutical studies in order to make the money to come to Thailand, and so I would travel from Dallas to Austin to San Antonio, and I would joke and tell my friends that I felt like I was almost on a conveyor belt when I would go to these different areas. Because when you're on the freeway, it's like, okay, there's McDonald's, there's Arby's, there's Walmart. Then you go to Austin, McDonald's, Arby's, Walmart. You go to San Antonio, it's the same thing. And it's like you just feel like you're like on some sort of a treadmill. It's like where is the individuality of each of these places? There is individuality and there's culture in each of these places, but uh, but the rift between uh, the poor and the rich is getting to a point where these corporations just own so much of the space because it's so prohibitively expensive to do like a small business in the States. Like here, what's interesting is that I can walk out and I can walk down the street, and somebody can just literally just take a table. They can make some stuff, and they can just sit there and they can just sell their food. Um, Whereas in the States, you have to have all sorts of regulation and things like that. I guess there's pluses and minuses to each of those, um, but it's very strange to come from a place where everything is just a box store to a place where everything is very local and everything is very much still done with cash. And it feels like it feels like Thailand is kind of like living. It's like living in the past. It's like maybe what America was in the 50s or something.
Yeah. Well, Thailand's next. Asia's next.
Yeah,
As soon as
definitely it
as
is.
soon as the great corporate monolith is done owning everything here, then it will. I mean, I think it's already started in China. It's partnered with China, and it's only a matter of
Yeah.
time. I don't think it's going to succeed. Things look dire and whatever and dystopian and that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
again, there you should never underestimate the human spirit, and there will be a great revealing. And what'll happen essentially is there'll be a big sigh of relief, and there'll be a lot of things that need to be corrected and everything, and they'll be good for a while. And then the master manipulators in the shadows will figure out how to co-opt everything again, and then the process starts again. It's another cycle. They'll figure out how to do, whatever it is and gain as much power, profit, and control as they can. Um, and then at some point people will have enough, and there will be freedom, health, and prosperity returned to the people, and that cycle will just continue on and on and on. But back to what you were talking about in Blade Runner, I get the sense that, and I've been thinking a lot about how this maps to our sense of self, and Decker's sense of self is completely false,
Mhm. Mhm.
completely illusory. He has
Mhm.
no in fact, he has no idea, right? He hasn't an inkling what his true identity is, right? He's not aware
Yeah.
of it at all.
Mhm.
And I think a lot about that, and I realized that at the end of the movie, it's so interesting. Rutger Hauer is
Mhm.
talking about teardrops in the rain, our lives, right? It's just
Mhm.
incredible scene.
Mhm.
And it's ironic to think that Rutger Hauer's character, this replicant, is pointing out to Decker this this that if you let go of this false sense of self that this replicant has, right?
Mhm.
That all of a sudden you can come into a pure state of being
Mhm.
once the false sense of self is kind of shucked off. And so in the beginning of the film, it starts with the false sense of self. Like you say, Decker is looking for a job. He's confused about his identity. This blimp flies by, promising this new self, this new life,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Completely, it's the society we live in today, which is completely everything's everything you see in the public eye that's for public consumption is done by actors. It's done by professional speakers. It's all theater. All of it's theater. But then at the end of the film, the end of Blade Runner, Rutger Hauer is really, truly, um, it's it's as if he's accepted, okay? He's accepted who or what he is. He's completely accepted it. And through that acceptance and the dropping of any kind of false sense of identity, or because remember, the replicants want what? They want to live, right? They want
Mhm.
to live just like human beings. And so Blade Runner is basically saying that all humans are replicants if there's no difference between a human and a replicant in my estimation. That's the way I see Blade Runner, because
Mhm.
if you have this false sense of self and you're running around with that and you're letting someone else kind of program you, and that gets into the matrix, okay? Because it's all
Yeah.
programming. It's all
Mhm.
the theater of social media and television and news and all that. It's programming. They repeat the same message. That's how you program anyone. Repeat the
Mhm.
same message.
Mhm.
So you can, contrarily, you can program yourself with the messages that you want. You can become the programmer, right? And that's kind of the story of the Matrix. But at the end of the film in Blade Runner, we really are shown that this false sense of self, or we're shown the Rutger Hauer reveals the illusion for what it is, and this false sense of self, and he enters he enters a moment of just incredible beauty and clarity,
Mhm.
and that's basically those cycles come through to humanity at large, where we have those moments of clarity, those moments where this is all theater, this is all a bunch of, right? It was Juvenal of ancient Rome who said, give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt. But at some point, the funny thing about the human spirit is, if you have enough bread and circuses, if you have enough DoorDash and Netflix, is what we would call it in the modern era, if you have enough of that, the intuitive side of you is going to be kicking and screaming, depressed, and everything's going to be feel completely wrong until it comes to a head, until it comes to a point where everyone's like, well, wait a minute, what the heck is going on here? This is something's really wrong here.
Mhm.
And then there's a conscious awareness that can happen spontaneously in anybody. And that's, I think that's a lot of what Philip K. Dick was experiencing. He was more exceptional in that in that sense than a lot of others. Now, for me, I've had to work at, meditating, being really, really like every day, and trying to get some sort of glimpse, some sort of clarity, some sort of sense that everything's going to be okay, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's attainable for anyone. That's attainable for all of us, just through a daily meditation practice. And when you're saying, when you're telling me you're going down the conveyor belt and you're seeing Walmart, McDonald's, Arby's, you're seeing everything on a loop, and you're going down this conveyor belt, right? I completely identify with that. And at the same time, at the very same time, I could also be sitting in a car going down that same conveyor belt and be completely consciously blissed out with no sense of false self, glimpses now. I mean, this isn't a normal state. And that's possible anywhere at any time. So it's not as if people have to do something, go somewhere, or anything like that. It really is conscious awareness. It really is just coming into self-knowledge, just like Rutger Hauer's character accepted. He fully, at the end of the film, he fully accepted what he was and what he is and where he was at. He fully accepted it, and that was such a beautiful scene, because in that acceptance there's bliss, there's harmony, there's a connection, there's a decoupling from this false self, and there's a connection with everything. And then that's when things change. That's the only time things change is when our conscious awareness changes, when we expand our awareness. David Lynch always says, or I watched this video probably 20 times. He says, if you have I'll do my David Lynch impersonation. He says, if you read a book and you have a golf ball size understanding, you're going to have he says, if you read a book and you have a golf ball size awareness, when you're done reading that book, you'll have a golf ball size understanding of the material, And so really nothing has to be done necessarily except accepting. We just have to accept this is the mess we're in. And what got us here is that our collective conscious awareness is a reflection of the leaders we have, of the world we're in, and of the Walmarts, McDonald's, and Arby's. I can't tell you the last time I've been in a McDonald's or any place like that. So that's kind of where we're at. And if we accept that we're being fed not only a false narrative in every direction, but that false narrative is programming us into believing in a false self. And that's the key, because all of the stuff, that's all of the narratives, and they're piling lies on top of lies on top of lies, right? It's so ridiculous to watch. It's comical to see how many lies they're trying to invent, because that story of the I think it's a fable where you tell one lie and then you have to tell another one to cover up for that one. It's preposterous how many lies the leadership in the Western nations are trying to, they're trying to keep up with all of these lies. Well, eventually that's going to topple over, and it's just going to be people realizing that, well, either accepting the mess that we're in and then moving, and that's the only time we can move forward is when we accept. When we ignore or deny or blame or any of the other stuff, that's all false sense of self. But when we come into our true sense of self, we accept where we're at, that's the only time when things really change. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it feels like it really is hitting that point where something dramatic is about to happen. I mean, I've seen some of the videos of like San Francisco and some of the other spots, specifically in California, where it's just people have just gone insane. There's so many tents all over the cities, you know.
Yeah,
It's really wild.
it really is compounding factors too. There's a lot of compounding factors happening. The job market's changed quite a lot. So there's a lot of the jobs that are being automated. So there's a lot of people out of
Yeah.
work. Um, there's a lot of businesses that were basically coming in on this cheap money economy where there were just a lot of BS businesses that really didn't add a lot of value. And
Hmm.
so we had a lot of bloat in the business sector where there were all these businesses that were built on like a lot of startups but a lot of like large businesses with venture capitalists putting in hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases that turned out to be just like there's it's not what people need, right? People need the basic things. If you're in a sector, let's say, you work in a grocery store or something, that's job security. Things that people need. I mean, that's always going to be there, but there's been this like, if inflation, you know, inflation just isn't for the dollar. Inflation is in everything. Inflation is in the job market. There's an inflation of jobs that are just BS jobs. They're BS businesses, and they don't really add value to people's lives. And people are starting to wake up and understand the things that add value to your life, you know, are not, a lot of those things are pretty basic and they're not really that difficult to understand. And a lot of the things they're trying to convince you add value or interesting or all this kind of stuff, they're actually kind of an empty, it's just kind of empty, right? It's really not that interesting. So when you have real friends, when you have real skills, and you combine that with some kind of sense of community and some sort of sense of real wealth, because real wealth is, again, having time. We have more labor saving devices than ever before, and yet people are busier than ever before. How is that
Hmm.
possible? Like, wasn't it in the 1950s and 60s they were telling people all this technology is going to allow you to do so much, to have so much more leisure time and to relax.
Hmm.
And then most people can't sit down, close their eyes, and meditate for 20 minutes and just let their mind go. If you can't do that, you are in trouble. You need to
Hmm.
learn how to, this is a real skill, and you need to learn how to do that, because if you can't sit still for even 5 minutes, or I'm going to start doing some meditations on my channel. I'll start with like 5 minutes or something and encourage people to try to do that. But if you spend your whole day and your mind is just running around and around and around and around and you're distracted, then they got you. They got you, right? It's the same, and it's the same, it's the same principle in the Matrix. When everyone's being actively programmed, how much time do you have for programming yourself? How much time do you have to even step out of the programming? Because that's what something that meditation does. It allows you to step out of to decouple from yourself and to stop programming yourself and just have a break from yourself. I mean, doesn't everyone need a break from themselves?
Hmm.
I sure as hell do.
Hmm.
I mean, we really do need a break from ourselves, and we need to have some sense of we need to have a real sense of time, because the linear sense of time that Philip K. Dick is talking about, and how he's saying that doesn't seem correct and everything, I agree with him 100%. And I think that I've gotten more of a sense of that through and I mean, gosh, Wes, you're in the I would guess you're in one of the meditation capitals of the world. You could probably find a temple somewhere, an ashram, and
Hmm.
find a teacher that will teach you.
Hmm. Yeah, so I started doing Vipassana meditation like I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. I went on a meditation retreat, one of those 10-day retreats, and that was hugely helpful and inspirational, and it's been a constant thing, not a daily thing as much as it is now. Me and my partner now, we meditate every day, um, which is that goes to the what we were talking about, David Lynch. I was just listening to one of your videos, and you were talking about how David Lynch just hit his 50th year of doing transcendental
Yeah.
meditation.
Amazing,
If
huh? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
if we end up doing a weekly podcast, maybe we could introduce that with like a short meditation or something. Um, but like
Yeah.
you were talking about in your Twin Peaks video, that you were saying like that a lot of the ideas, as you've gotten into your own meditative practice and then looking at Twin Peaks, you can see that there's definitely some direct overlap in terms of like not just from the philosophical point of view. And I get this sense, even though I don't know as much about it as you do, whenever I watch Twin Peaks, that it's not like he's just trying to take these philosophical ideas and trying to plug them into these archetypes. It's much more like he seems to be translating an experience that he's going through these different characters, and he's trying to communicate that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It seems to me, knowing about his creative process and listening to some of his stories, it seems like things are coming to him and he's going with it. That's it.
Hmm.
And when you have, I mean, I can't imagine if you've had a twice daily meditation practice for 50 years, and even into, I mean, I'm a year in and I can't, I just, I just don't, I can't explain the benefits. It's been off the chart. So 50 years, um, it seems to me like, I think Lynch is going with things that are coming to him, and the reason things are coming to him quite easily, it seems, is because he is in contact with his deep essence. Is not he's not he's not running around on the hamster wheel of the false self, of the ego, telling himself
Hmm.
this and this and that, and I'm this and I'm that. Things, when you stop the noise of that programming and you stop identifying with your false sense of self or the ego. Now, we need the ego. I'm not saying, you know, the goal is to get rid of the ego and what have you. The ego keeps you safe or protects you, but this, the ego differentiates you from one creature to another, and it's a survival mechanism. But once you understand what it is, then you can at least have fun with it and have a laugh at it, because it so oftentimes tries to control every aspect of your identity and who you think you are and this image you have of yourself. That's all nonsense. It's all false. It's completely false. And so I think a long time ago, probably before I was born, David Lynch lost um, that false sense of self, or at least came into contact with that he came more into contact with the eternal essence of being, or Brahma, or whatever you want to call it. He came into very he came into close contact with that, and probably intuited that his idea of self, while convenient in navigating in this human form to perform the everyday functions of a human being, has really no place or no relevance in his work. And so I think the things that come to him, yes, they are his experiences and things that uh he said one time that he had, I mean, the character Bob, right? He just
Hmm.
had this flash of insight in a moment where um he asked he has this guy on the set who's holding lights or something. Hey, can you act? Hey, can you stand over here? This looks interesting. Can you do this? It's just like that, right?
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
things that unfold. And the amazing thing about conscious awareness, and if we are to believe that it is infinite, which I certainly don't see a reason why it couldn't be, because if there is only physical form and no actual physicalness, if that's an illusion, then anything's possible. So Why not be open to everything? And I think Lynch is just so deeply intuitive at this point that um, his creative process is like without effort. Does that make sense? Like he's not agonizing. Oh God, if I write this, I put this here. The only agonizing part of it, or the only seemingly difficult part of it, I suppose, is trying to get all the elements together to film the darn thing, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
as far as the ideas and the inspiration, it's
Yeah.
it's as it's as easy as meditating. It's as easy as just letting your mind go, letting the false sense of self decouple from you for a while, and just letting your mind naturally do what it's supposed to do. And that's,
Yeah.
your mind is there's that great video. You probably have seen this. I talk about this a lot. It's called The Divided Brain. um, it's it features a talk from psychologist and medical doctor, um, Lane McGilchrist, and he talks about the intuition and the
Hmm.
intellect. And I was talking to you earlier before we started recording. I was talking to you about the Myers Briggs, and now you have thinkers and feelers.
Hmm.
Well, Lane McGilchrist is talking about the brain has, now it's not like hemispherical, two-sided. That kind of notion is a little off, but he's talking about, we have this intuitive sense and this intellectual sense. We have the intuition and the intellect. And even Einstein said that the intellect is the servant of the intuition. The intuition's running the show. If you just let the use the mind and use the intellect when it's appropriate, but most of the time just let things come in, because that's really what's running the show here. And I think that's Lynch's process.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I think that we can all. I think that me and you can both definitely relate to that idea of the creative process being so effortless. I've found that whenever I came out here, so when I came out here, I basically had like a year of money put together in order to pursue doing some of these comics and then putting these video essays together. And it's really interesting to me what you're saying. It directly overlaps with my experience, which is that there's been times along this year where I've started to think like, well, I need to. I was doing freelance illustration when I was in the States. Um, there's been times when I stopped doing the comic and I started to turn my work. I started to react in a fear-based way of thinking like, how am I going to keep myself going if this comic isn't going to make me any money or whatever? Because I just have the first two issues, which you can download them in the description box, but they're both free right now. Um, but anyway, I'm thinking like, oh, how am I going to keep this going? And I start to divert myself away from the comic and I start doing things where I'm externally looking at what other people are doing and I'm trying to copy that, whatever that is, illustration, character designs, or whatever. And I immediately recognize, it took me a little while to recognize this, but I started to recognize that as soon as I start going down that path, it's like swimming upstream. It's like I'm having to fight my way through everything it is that I'm doing. And then when I give up on that and I go, okay, just do the comics and do the video essay series, it's like something just comes back online immediately. It's like the essays themselves, a lot of the times it seems like they're already written and I'm just writing them down. Like it just
Hmm.
pours out of me so effortlessly. Even the videos, like when I'm editing the videos, I had to learn how to do that this year. There's been so many times when I'll write my essay and then I'll record it and then I'll start dropping samples of the video in the timeline and they'll match up perfectly with exactly what it is I said. Like this is exactly where it is that I would want it to transition, but I didn't. I wasn't messing with it. And it's the same thing with the comics. It's interesting because you when you're on that path because you have all these synchronicities that start to click with you that are so like on the nose that it's ridiculous. Like um, I remember when I was living at the first apartment that I was at, I would walk down the street and weed is legal here. So I went to go and buy a little bit of bud at this local pot shop, and I went down there, and while I'm waiting to get my bud, there's like a book donation uh, place right next to it, and people just go there and they just donate the book, and then you can go and you can just pick up the book, and then you can pay like 20 baht, and it goes to like a veterinary clinic or something like that, right? And so I go over there and I just put my hand randomly on a random DVD that's in this box, and I pick it up, and it's Minority Report, and I'm like, okay.
It's your unconscious that's running the show. Just like Glenn McGilchrist said, it's the intuition that is the master, and it's the intellect that's the servant. We have it backwards in this society.
Mm-hmm.
At least in the West, we have it backwards, where the emphasis is on the intellect and all of the data, which is,
Mm-hmm.
it's nonsense. I mean, this data and this whole AI thing and all this, where it's leading to, it's a
Mm-hmm.
big scam. It's a whole bunch of nothing to enrich a small group of people,
Mm-hmm.
and make everyone else just kind of like miserable and controlled, and that's all it ever is. And so once we recognize that reality, that things can happen with ease, once we let go of the false this false paradigm that's happening, and we let go and we stop trying so darn hard. I don't have I just My problem is that I don't have enough time to get to all the projects and all the ideas in my notebook that I have ready to go. I just don't have enough time. That's partially why I reached out to you to do a podcast, just to have a dialogue on different things that are going on and different ideas and stuff. Also, just a way to get some of that stuff out, because I'm going insane just by, like, knowing that there's so much stuff to talk about and try to figure out. And a thing for me is also, a lot of times uh, I don't really know something, or I don't really understand something until I have a chance to talk it through,
Yeah.
right? And I
Mm-hmm.
see you nodding your head, and that indicates to me that you are indeed. I suspect you probably are an INFJ like I am, which is pretty rare. But there's a reason you reached out to me. What was it? Probably about 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago now, that we did that first interview, and I got the intuitive sense, the unconscious sense right away that you were an intuitive. I mean, that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
clear.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with intuitives is that we seem weird, and people don't want to, we're not as well presented or put together
Mm-hmm.
as the sensory group, which is fine. But it's the intuitives where really all the ideas really come from. It's, the Philip K. Dicks and the David Lynches and people like that are interested in these ideas. Sure, our work is by intuitives for intuitives, but I'm just telling you right now that the cyclical nature of how things work is, at some point, because we're in the scrap heap right now, but at
Mm-hmm.
some point, intuitives, artists, intuitives, people like that, are going to end up in a position where people are going, what do we do? How do we do this? Not
Mm-hmm.
that they want any of us, and none of us are silly enough or dumb enough to run for office anyway. I'd never do such a thing. I'd never
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice my sanity. But at the same time, there is, we have to recognize that the intuition is the way forward. And you
Mm-hmm.
know people aren't going to, they're going to listen to someone like Peterson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or an intuitive who is, you know on the sensory side of things, or can be. They're going
Mm-hmm.
to listen, but it really is going to be that intuition that's going to lead us. And so, if you're looking for a way to improve your life, it's really to grow your intuition,
Mm-hmm.
to grow that side of yourself, and to realize that the intellect, or that hamster wheel of thoughts of, like, constantly, what is this person thinking? What is this? How do they, what do I think about this? What are they, like, that's just nonsense. It doesn't do anything for you. And like you said, when you let go of that, things just fall into place naturally. And as you know, when you were talking about synchronicity, I think about it in terms of like, if you're just open to what is in front of you and open to the possibilities, and you start to, because if you expand your awareness, you expand your conscious awareness, whatever's in front of you, whatever's right in front of you represents some sort of potentiality and some sort of possibility. And so if you're open, if you're more open than you have ever been, then things will seem like synchronicities, but the fact is that you're open to possibilities, and possibilities will just always come to you, but you have to be open. So that's another way, kind of another way to think about it is, it's not that synchronicities are happening to me because I'm special. It's
Right.
that it's that I'm opening to possibilities, and that I'm
Hmm.
seeing more than I did before. Because if
Hmm.
I'm if my conscious awareness is kind of closed off, then I'm not really seeing all the possibilities. But as soon as my conscious awareness expands and expands, I start seeing, wow, I didn't see this before. I didn't know about this. I didn't think about this. I didn't study this.
Hmm.
All these possibilities start flooding in. And so that's what I
Hmm.
think is happening with the intuitive mind, and why it's so darn important to get out of our minds, as Alan Watts used to say a lot. And I
Hmm.
think people like Philip K. Dick, and David Lynch and people like that, that stuff comes to them because they're open. They're not, they're none of that stuff is coming to creatives through the intellect,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? None of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That everything it is that you just said, that kind of sums up my experience as far as in this last year, is that it's been in a lot of ways, it's been the death of like my own feeling of being special in some sense. Like there was always an ego that was attached to the idea of being an artist or whatever, and it was a desperate trying to hold on to something and say like, this is why I should exist or something. um, but as I've had this experience with Philip K. Dick's work, and then this experience with, when I'm on this right lane, which it seems like it's my lane, things seem to fall into place. And then when I'm not, it's like I'm swimming upstream. You start to realize that you don't have as much doership as you think you do, as much as our
Right.
society tries to tell us that you do. Like I often think about like like our society kind of gives us this, and this is connected to the idea of the false identity. It gives us this idea that we're kind of like on a conveyor belt, and we always have another option. Like you always have another option to meet the next love of your life or something like that. But that's not how it is that it works. It's
Well,
like,
yeah, it's because you're trying on new identity after new. You keep trying them on like you're trying on clothes at a department store, and you're
yeah.
not, and you're never satisfied, because every single one of those things is a false identity. They're
Hmm.
all theater. They're all fake. Let that shit go and come
Hmm.
into what you really are. And I couldn't possibly describe what I truly am, um,
Hmm.
other than, in the Vedic philosophical sense of Brahma experiencing himself in a million different ways, right? But yeah, it's funny how it doesn't matter once you get out of your own way, and once it's paradoxes all the way down. It's really interesting to think like, once things actually start happening for you, you at the same time you realize it's not about me
Hmm.
at all. Like, it has
Hmm.
nothing to do with me at all. And like, this is accessible to everyone.
Hmm.
It doesn't it's not that David Lynch is, well, Lynch himself, the image I have of David Lynch, the image that I hold in my mind, just like I hold a false image of my own self, my own ego, this image I hold of David Lynch, right? Of, oh, he's this, he's that. I could never do that. I could never do that. Da, 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 da. None of that matters. And I can guarantee you, I've never met David Lynch, but I can guarantee you that's how he thinks. That's how he sees the world. Is it doesn't matter. He's in a specific form. He was born in a certain time in a certain place.
Hmm.
He didn't choose any of that. We didn't choose who our parents or who we were born to. None of that actually matters. What matters is coming into contact. If a human being, if we as human beings can at least come into contact with this sense of, I mean, even if like 20% of humanity came into contact of this eternal sense of this eternal essence, that whatever it is that we want to call it, if 20% came into that contact, wow, the world would be a completely different place, because conscious awareness would expand. And I could tell you that since I've been doing my regular meditation practice, everyone around me has been affected in some way, and everyone's noticed a change in me. They and I don't attribute it to me at all. It's actually letting go of me that's actually doing the changing, if that makes sense. It's letting
Absolutely.
go of the false sense of self, and understanding that it's really coming into your own essence. And then once you're open enough and you kind of decouple as much as you can, when you can, stuff just floods in, and that's for benefit of everyone. That benefits me, but of course I can't be there for anyone in my life, my family, my friends, my parents. I can't be there for them in a maximal way unless I'm there in a maximal way for myself. And that's the
Absolutely.
and so that's what has made the most sense to me. And just speaking as a man as well,
Mhm.
um, you can't be there for anyone unless you're there for yourself. And to be there for yourself, paradoxically, means to decouple from the false sense of self and come into your true essence.
Mhm.
You can understand that in any way you want. You know, some people may interpret that religiously, spiritually. You can even look at it in a scientific point of view. I mean, if you're really aware of science and how all that works, then you know that the physical reality has only been proven in forms of energy, and that's it. And that sounds woo or whatever, and scientific people don't like to talk about that. But look at the work of like Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. He's actually running for president. He's a systems engineer, um, probably one of the most brilliant people alive today. He invented email. Um, the establishment doesn't like him because he's just a regular guy, and he's not wanting to. He doesn't have a false sense of self. You're going to see more and more people in the world that are going to be one of two things. They're going to be either establishment, or they're going to act like they're against the establishment, but they secretly are. Or you're going to see people, there're going to be more people coming around like Dr. Ayyadurai that are going to be um, like people that have themselves out of the way, that are just kind of coming into contact with pure being and pure essence, that are just going to say it how it is. And that's what we're going to see more and more of, is just people, accepting reality, like I talked about, accepting it, saying it how it is, and then moving on from that, because we cannot improve ourselves and improve the world, or we can't do a darn thing until we accept. We can't blame, we can't do, all this political theater, all this nonsense, this and that. They that's all just, it just lacks, there's a false sense of self in all of those stories, and in all of that stuff. It's a
Mhm.
false idol. It's a false sense of self.
Mhm.
This has been known by the great teachers throughout antiquity. It's not a
Mhm.
secret. It's not like, but
Mhm.
there's so much noise today, and what we need is signal, right? We need to come into contact, and anyone can do this. Like, anyone can decouple, anyone can meditate, and just release the hamster wheel of nonsensical, this idea that the intellect is somehow in charge and running the show. It's
Mhm.
not. You've got a false sense of self that's running around, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, I'm enjoying it in a way, and it's not in my business to tell people that, oh, your whole life is a lie, is an illusion, and that kind of stuff, because we don't want to be just mean and nasty to each other, and that's not
Mhm.
the way forward. um, but yeah, it's almost like, that scene in the Matrix where, what's the character, I can't remember the character's name, the one who eats the steak, and he says, I know the steak's not real, but
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So and I'm the worst with details. Like I remember overall themes. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
whole theme of things I can grasp, but the details they're lost on me. And that's, again, my intellect's like, the the intuition's taking over. So maybe I could work on the intellect a little bit. So there's this scene where he's looking at the Matrix screen, right? And you've got this code coming down the screen. Remember that scene?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, well, all I see, he's like, I don't even see the code anymore. I just see blonde, brunette, redhead,
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like I feel like what I see with all of the theater on social media is I see false senses of self just kind of competing.
Yeah.
Who's which actor can outdo the other actor? It's all actors. I mean, it's all people putting on an act. And the most ridiculous thing about it is, now there's people like Elon Musk. He's an actor. He's putting on
Mm-hmm.
an act. Um, Trump's an actor, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
all actors. They're all part of this group that we're not in, and
Yeah.
they're all actors. Well, that part of it is understandable, and we can see that, and that's being they're going to be revealed for who they are. But the great reveal, what I'm talking about, is people themselves are going to realize, well, wait a minute, if this person's an actor and this person's what have I been doing? Maybe I've been acting a little bit. Maybe I should accept the fact that I've been programmed a false sense of self through all of this media and all of this stuff. That's
Mm-hmm.
because, just like in the Matrix, right? There are people that were going to fight to defend the Matrix and everything, because they're like, literally, a lot of the residents, they're real people. They're in a real form, but they're programmed, right? They're completely programmed. And that it's a perfect analogy for the reality we inhabit today. You couldn't make a better story. And it would take a mind like Philip K. Dick. It would take an intuitive who clearly has who clearly has a natural propensity to just decouple his, because you can't get those insights without getting yourself out of the way. I don't think that that's possible.
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible, because if it were possible, we'd be in real trouble, because narcissists like Trump, like
Mm-hmm.
Biden, notice I'm lumping them, they're all in the
Mm-hmm.
uniparty. They're all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are so narcissistic and so into their own narrative and their own story, that they're so closed, in other words, that the natural flow of ideas from the all that comes in from expanded conscious awareness doesn't come to them. What do? They steal, they have to co-opt and
Mm-hmm.
steal better ideas. I mean, the people came up with, the guy who came up with cryptocurrency, for example. That wasn't someone who was a co-opter and a dominator, and
Mm-hmm.
someone who is wrapped up in their own ego, and a narcissist and a sociopath. That came from someone who wanted to create something to thwart those people. This
Yeah.
is So you're seeing more of these things happening. You're seeing more of these efforts. And so now they're talking about Web 3.0, which is decentralization. So everything's going to be decentralized. I'm a huge part of that movement. I'm a proponent of it. I'm I'm all in, and it's happening quickly, and a lot of people are decentralized, and we can talk more about that after the stream. Decentralization is 100% one of the great things to look forward to on the internet, I would say, because the more time we spend on a private platform, um, just it's just more roundy round nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just a circus,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're just part of
Mm-hmm.
this big circus. And that's how they control, is by snookering people onto these platforms. So I guess what I want to say is that these this info this these downloads that come to you as a creative, are only possible. They're not possible by plotting, thinking, coming up with some plan. I mean, you can plan all you want, but at the end of the day, the real creative essence is not really coming to you if you're closed off in that fear, right? You're talking about this fear-based, and that's where they're operating from, because it's all about control. When you're coming from a place of fear, it's all
Mhm.
about who can I co-opt, who can I control, who can I dominate, what kind of systems exist for me to just come along and steal, to take from. These are we're talking about parasite, the fear-based thinking, and the people that run the world currently. This is all just, they're all parasites. They don't really, they're like, it's like the dragon that's like locked down its gold, and it's completely um paranoid against anyone coming into its domain and stealing its gold. And so all it ever does is just focus on fear, because the dragon and the reptile, that kind of stuff, that's the R complex of the brain. That's the very low, it's the lowest part of the brain,
Mhm.
and that's the part that is concerned with your fundamental survival.
Mhm.
And that's the fear, that's the fear base. I talked about that a little bit in Silent Hill, that the triune brain theory. I know it's a theory or whatever, and people are gonna,
Mhm.
but there's something to that, obviously. And that's basically what we're seeing. And one other thing I wanted to say is, you have three power centers in your body. Okay, you have your head, your heart, and your gut. Okay, why is the gut a power center? Well, they've discovered that there are certain types of neurons in the gut that are as much as plentiful as they are in the brain, if not even more. And what we understand is that, and I talked about this, Plato's tripartite of souls, and he talks about the three power centers in the body. And the play that the dominators are doing right now is, they're they're trying to appeal to the intellect and the gut. So they're playing this game where they're going back and forth, back and forth. But the balance or the recognition is in the heart. So the heart confers with the intellect, and it confers with the gut, or the appetite. So
Mhm.
your mind has everything to do with your false sense of self. Okay, it has everything to do with like how you work out a problem, and the mind has obviously great uses, and we've created so many great things with the mind. But without the other two power centers, you're not complete. You're not really, you're not optimized as a human being. So they want you in the they want you to jump back and forth between the two power centers. Now, what's the gut? The gut is the appetites. Plato talked about the appetites, and the appetites have to do with food. Obviously, there's a lot of, you know a lot to say about that, but also sexual desire. So the sexual desire, all that stuff's in the lower part. And the higher order thinking, the things you should do, the idealism, the false sense of self, all that kind of stuff is in the mind. And I'm not saying anything bad about any part of the body, or anything like that. So I know some people might get confused and say, well, you're saying the brain is bad and the gut's bad. So what my point is, if you go from this, people experience this like extreme levels of resentment and guilt, because they're being played here and in the gut, and it's going back and forth and back and forth. So they're thinking about their lower self. So you have this conflict. You're conflicted within yourself. But then when you realize, if you start engaging the heart, and you let the heart's the media, it's between the two main power centers. But the heart's the ultimate power center, because it's the mediator between your intellect and your appetites. Or you could even say your intuition, because when you have a gut feeling, that's your intuition, right? And so this this sense of the heart being between the two, if you start thinking about that, start contemplating on that, the heart accepts both the gut and the mind and anything that they do, but it helps calm them down. It helps mediate things, and it helps you find balance, because it's in the middle. And what is the number one killer in the West? Heart disease. It's not by some coincidence that heart disease is the number one killer. People's hearts are literally damaged because they're flipping between the intellect and the gut, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's literally making them sick because the heart has no say in the matter and the heart's just getting damaged. So there's a lot to be said about that. And I'm not quite so, I guess I'm not quite so sure why I went on that little tangent, but it had something to do with the the Matrix, right? So the Matrix, so here's the thing. You can't program the heart. That's the big secret. You can program the mind, okay? You can program the mind through all sorts of games and repetition and stories and narratives. You repeat some garbage narrative, and eventually you repeat it enough, people believe it. Like, for example, how many times have you heard someone say, I didn't like that song, but then it kind of grew on me, right? That's exactly how it works. Is if you repeat something, whatever it is, and someone hears it enough times, they'll just start repeating it like it was their own idea. That's just the system of human programming. That's just how it works. Same thing with the gut, same thing with the appetites. You develop an appetite for something, and then you just want more and more and more of that, right? But it's empty, right? It's not fulfilling. Fulfillment comes through the heart. And so once you understand that it's the heart cannot the heart can't be manipulated like the mind and the gut can. The heart is actually in, I think, in very much in Japanese, in a lot of Japanese storytelling, there's an emphasis on the heart, because the heart is true. The heart, you just can't fool the heart. It's either, you know, you're either heart's in it or it's not. It's there. There's no like mental gymnastics. Like in the mind, it's all gymnastic. You can lie many different ways. There's all kinds of ways to lie, right? The gut doesn't really have a say in the matter, because the gut is the lower instincts. It's the appetites, sexual desires. It's all the stuff that we're kind of biologically, hardwired for anyway. So it's the heart that confers between these two. Seemingly, if these are disconnected, then the heart has to say, hey, guys, we need to calm down a little bit here. No judging or anything, but we need to calm down a bit. We need to chill. And we're coming into an era of that, where people are realizing that there needs to be some sort of a balance, because everything's all kind of out of whack. And the thing is, if you don't have clarity in your own sense of self, then you'll never have clarity about the world around you. If you don't have an expanded awareness, and if you're just running around on a hamster wheel, and you haven't really done the work on yourself, by letting yourself go, not trying to go through the motions in your head and think, well, I should do this, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But then when you don't do it, you feel bad about yourself. That's not the way to do it. The heart's going to say, okay, the heart's going to talk to you in a way that isn't, you're not abusing yourself up here, and you're not in your gut, you're not running around just unchecked, completely just off the rails, right? The heart's always the one that's going to bring you into balance. So more people that are going to be heart centered, that are going to think about this, that focus on that, are going to find that their lives are going to be less chaotic. They're going to be more ordered, and things are going to be more clear, right? And so that's what's happening in the in the Matrix. There's this push pull between the intellect, or the higher self, and the lower self, and that's happening constantly. That's a recurring theme in the Matrix, and that's happening constantly, where the guy who's eating the steak, he's into the that those are the desires, and he's like, oh, that's what pulls him in. Okay, the desire pulls him in, back into the Matrix. And what keeps people there is the mind, and repeating the message and the false story. But there's that scene where Neo brings Trinity back to life by reaching into her heart. Remember that scene? She takes a bullet to the heart, he reaches into the heart, and he's basically pointing to the heart, saying, this is where this is where this is supposed to this is where this is supposed to come from. It doesn't come from here. It comes from the heart, because the control. See, the heart can't be controlled. That's why heart disease is the number one thing. Is the number one killer, is because they're trying to actively kill it because they know they can't control it. They can control
Mm.
this. They can control this with all kinds of media nonsense. They can control your gut with, with food that's terrible for you, with porn, with all kinds of titillation online, and all this kind of stuff. They can seemingly satisfy that, although it's not really ever satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they can do both of those things in the higher and lower power centers, but they can't control the heart. You can't make someone love you, right? I can't manipulate someone into loving me. And if I did, what kind of person would I be? And how much time do you have to invest? That would just be like, it's on a mass scale, it's not possible, right? And on a scale like 1-to-1, that's like, well, that person's just crazy, like they're a psychopath or something, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so having a sense, so if you think about that, and you think about the messages that are coming, and you try to confer what's coming to you through the heart, you'll always get the right answer. You'll never get the wrong answer. You'll always get the right answer. The right answer will always be there waiting for you. It's crazy, huh? It's true.
Yeah, everything you're saying, it reminds me of this other book that I was listening to called Reality Transurfing. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, but he's a Russian guy, and his book it's very complicated. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it, but there's an idea in there that I thought was very powerful, because he's coming from a Russian background, and so his work is in the manifestation area of the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's coming at it from a different perspective. Whereas, if you read on like uh, Abraham Hicks or any of these people where they're talking about like what you're putting your energy towards is what it is that you're bringing into your life. He's looking at it from the other perspective of like, okay, that's true, but what happens when you get a large group of people together that are all activated by like the fear survival sense, and they start to create what he calls a pendulum. And in this book, he was a physicist actually. So he's talking about it in terms of just like the pure physics of when we all concentrate our energy onto a specific idea, it starts to have a life of its own, and it becomes like this social emotional complex, and it can completely have its own autonomy in a sense. And it's interesting. I think it's such a relevant idea to what it is that we're living in now, because right now we live in a world of pendulums. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's somebody that with enough leverage, they can generate an idea or they can put something out there, and if it goes viral, it's like it's infected the minds of millions of people. And now it's like this thing that didn't even exist in your reality is now this huge stumbling block that you have to get over, you have to contend with it in some way. And it reminds me of your Word Magic series, which I recommend that anybody who's watching this go and watch the Word Magic series that you have on your YouTube channel, because I think you really break down you break down the idea of the magi versus the sorcerer, right? And it's almost like the sorcerer uses these pendulums to disrupt our natural guidance system in a way in order to control us, right? And ultimately, I love the way that you phrased the magi versus the sorcerer, because the sorcerer always fails because they're trying to control something that they can't ultimately control. It's like trying to hold up a house of cards. Eventually, it's going to fall, right? And we're just kind of like in this constant cycle of dealing with this force, this negative force that exists in the world.
Yeah, well, the ultimate illusion is control.
Hmm.
And so that's why they're doomed to failure, because eventually, whatever control you think you have. I mean, it's the same concept of the false self. You think you have control of yourself, or you think there is a self. Your ego is telling you that, or, I mean, consciously, intellectually, you can appreciate why the sense of self is an illusion, but also intellectually, you can also appreciate why it's important to have. I mean, if we weren't, if we didn't have some sense of individuality, being an individual, nothing would get done, and it would just be, you know what I mean? There wouldn't be any kind of society or anything. It would just be weird, right? Well, actually, in a way, they say, you know, in the Satya Yuga, which is the golden age in Vedic philosophy, um, where the days are much longer and people live a lot longer, and the age is actually a lot longer. There's this. It's, I guess if I think about it, there wouldn't be a sense of self in the same way that is today. And another reason why time seems to be going faster. I don't know if you've noticed that, but a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people comment on that, and I noticed that time seems to be speeding up. Have you got that? Have you gotten that sense at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been out here in Thailand for almost a year, and it feels like it's gone by
Yeah,
so quick.
everyone seems to be in a hurry, and everything's, and I find myself
Yeah.
like, wow, I need to slow down. Um, well, that's a core feature of the Kali Yuga, because it's the shortest of the four yugas. It's the shortest period. It's the Iron Age or the Dark Age. It's the shortest period, and it's Kali. It's the um, she's devouring and destroying the world, so that it will, and it's we're we have a long ways to go in the Kali Yuga, but eventually it's going to come back up into the Dwapara Yuga, which is the Bronze Age, and we're on the upswing, I guess, if that's any consolation. But we're going to live and die in this Kali Yuga, um, but but there are cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles. So this, the astrological ages, right? The Piscean age is almost over. We're coming into the Aquarian age. There's these different ages. These are significant as well, and these cycles are very, just like the seasons, just like all of the cycles. Um, there are small cycles, larger cycles, and just because we can't directly observe some of these larger cosmic cycles doesn't mean that they don't cause massive change. At least I think they definitely do.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think that we're at an hour and 37 minutes here. I think we're going to have to call it. But we're making an announcement now that we're both going to do our own podcast. And whenever this goes live, we'll make sure to, whenever we record one, we'll both put it in our community posts so we can let everybody know. So reinstallpaul.com is where we can find all your work, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. And
Simple.
you've got like a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, I love your channel. The BioShock stuff, Silent Hill is how I came across your work, but you got lots of great content on there. For those interested in checking out some of my work, I have links to my print shop with my illustrations as well as my comics and links below. I also do commissions, so anybody that's interested, feel free to reach out. This podcast airs 6 p.m. Central Standard Time each week, and we'll have an announcement soon with what we're doing as far as our own podcast. So thank you guys for watching, and have a great night.